All right, what's up, everybody? Gonna have a good discussion today, talking about what should you be thinking as a player or a parent when a school is recruiting your son or yourself. What are the most important things to consider when making that? Again, when you're getting recruited, obviously you want to keep all your options open. You want to be as open about every possibility, especially now with all these changes that we've been talking about, the lower roster count, the bigger and bigger portal classes that especially the Division I schools are bringing in. And when you're getting down to that time to make a decision on where you're going to end up for the next, hopefully 3 or 4 years, if you maybe get drafted, but 4 years, that's what you're making a decision on. What are the most important things to consider when making that decision? Because a lot of people just make the wrong decision and don't consider all the factors. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, what are the expectations at different levels for what players' capabilities are, velocity. I got a great question a few days ago on one of our YouTube videos about, what are the velocity expectations at different levels? And I think that's a pretty common question. But velocity is just kind of one part of like 10 variables in an equation that evaluators are looking at when deciding, all right, is this a guy we want to go after? Or is this a pitcher we want to go after? And then the same is true of position players. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some hitting tips, some pitching stuff, and obviously any questions you guys have, you ask, I'll be answering as we go through the stream. Always, guys, remember, if you're looking for help in the recruiting process, now it's crazier than ever. It's harder than ever to get to a school, a Division I school, let alone a Division I school where you're going to get a chance to compete for a starting spot as a freshman. So if you're looking for that help, go to this QR code, scan it, fill out the form on our front page, and we'll meet with you, give you an evaluation of where we think your son is at right now, where he could potentially get to, how we can help facilitate that, and then ultimately, if it makes sense for you guys to start working with us after that meeting. So we're going to cover all that today, guys. As always, Kane's already in the chat. I'm going to start calling you Eric. We just landed a commit. Kind of shocked that we just did, assuming 2026 because 2025 class is signed, even though our starting shortstop for this upcoming year was a late addition in our 24 class. Yeah, the reality, Canes, is that he's probably a 26, but schools every once in a while, like I think of, Von Lackey at Georgia Tech, who's was a late addition in the summer right before he got on campus, and then ended up getting a lot of playing time last year for Georgia Tech in the catcher position. Defensively, really good. Bat was obviously a work in progress. Didn't have that great of a year offensively, but if a lot of guys that are late bloomers, it's usually pitchers that get picked up late. All of a sudden, if a guy's, he's competing in the strike zone with low 90s up to mid 90s, like they can find a spot for you. They can find a way to make it work to get you an offer. So I would guess he's probably a 26 for Miami that is committing at this time, but it could be a late edition 2025 signing. I think you're going to see less in the 25 class than normal. It was obviously that's an outlier type scenario. Not every program is picking up a guy late, like for now would be a 25 guy. Probably going to be less of that this year with all these changes and all the guys in the 25 class that got cut. But you never know. So first thing I want to go over, guys, is, Kendall Rogers tweeted this earlier today, and wanted to talk about it. Obviously, Kendall at D1 baseball, he's been covering college baseball for a long time. They do a great job just covering the game. Get some inside info, especially during the coaching carousel. But I thought it was important to go over this and kind of give you my thoughts, see some of the reactions to this tweet, and then kind of start our discussion there. So The tweet reads, parents of recruits need to really dive into roster construction during the recruitment process. If a roster is 34 moving forward and the team recruiting you is signing 20 guys every class, do the math on little Johnny's chances of playing early. There are a lot of great options in college baseball. And then and that was following this tweet right here with the number of cuts made on rosters at the break this fall. Obviously, way more than, we've been telling you guys. I mean, there's way more guys entering the portal post your fall schedule than in the years past since the portal opened. I mean, way more. It's not even close. The number of cuts that will start happening when rosters are capped at 34 next fall. We'll see if that happens. I mean, again, the cuts are going to happen because right now you're operating with 40. So some of those guys coming in are either going to have to get cut, or your 26 class and your incoming portal class are going to be smaller. So those are the decisions that are going to have to be made. It's either you cut the guys on your 25 season team that didn't really play, don't look like they're going to play. You cut some of those guys, and your 26 class is going to be smaller. Your portal class incoming is probably going to be a little bit smaller. The time is now to make it where cut players can be eligible in the spring as long as they're in good academic standing, which makes a lot of sense. Again, I mean, the NCAA, you think they would have thought this through about, okay, we're going to make it to where a lot of guys are getting cut. They had to know that was going to happen. They should have made it kind of an easier landing for a lot of these players by allowing them to be eligible in the spring as long as they're in good academic standing. So you could see that change coming. Again, this is kind of just a suggestion. I don't think he's going off any info that he's heard, even though those discussions are probably being had already. But some of the reaction that's not, I'll give you kind of my reaction to this first. Obviously, we do this at Elite Sports Advising with our clients. When they're making a decision, if there's more than one school involved, we're looking at the roster. We're looking at, does the player's personality and mentality match well with the coaching style? Is the campus a good fit for them? Again, I've told you guys now, it's like, those are kind of secondary and third tier considerations now with just how difficult it is to get playing time now to Division I school. But we take all that into account. Obviously, the financial aid that's being offered. But our number one goal and number one suggestion is always like, we're going to advise you guys on where the school that gives you the best chance to compete for a starting spot as a freshman. That's where we're going to advise you go. That what's become more difficult now is with the portal. You may look at the roster of a team. Let's say you're committing and you've made a commitment like this fall. This is your junior fall, so you can see what the current team is. And you're an outfielder. And two of the guys are juniors, and they've been really good players. People are projecting them to get drafted. And the other guy is a senior, so should be 3 spots for you to compete for when you step on campus in the outfield. That was the situation with me at Georgia Tech when I made that decision to commit to Georgia Tech. That was the exact decision. Again, it's harder to judge if a guy's going to get drafted now because there's only 20 rounds in the draft. Back then, I think it was 50 or 55, and then by the time I got drafted, it was down to 40. But if you were a really good college player, you were getting drafted. Now you got a lot of guys that are really good college players that may not have like the standout tools, that you typically have for a pro guy. Then you may be sticking around. So it's harder to judge that now. And the biggest thing is it can look like you're going to have multiple spots to compete for, but the school now can bring in 3 outfielders 2 weeks before school starts, before you step on campus, and all of a sudden those spots, you got heavy competition for those spots now. When I made that decision going to Georgia Tech, there was no one else on the roster that had received significant at bats that was an outfielder. So I knew we're all pretty much starting from ground zero, except for the fact that some guys were going to be sophomores. So they had been around the program a little bit. But again, if you're not showing success on the field in the season, you don't really have a leg up over anyone else. If you've proven yourself in a season, then you're the shoe-in for the guy that's going to be getting that starting role. But if you haven't had a lot of at-bats, everyone's kind of starting at base level, and you get to try to win that spot. So it's harder now to look at roster construction because of the portal. Even if the roster construction looks great for you, that can change 2 weeks before you step on campus with the portal. So again, like, it's about asking questions of the coaches. What's your plan? Coach, it's looking like right now, like, you're gonna be missing 2 or 3 outfielders here when I step on campus. What are your plans in the portal? Are you guys going to go get some guys in the portal? And, just see what they say. They may tell you, we're not thinking about that right now, or we're not planning on it. But again, you just never know. What I would say is if the right player shows up in the portal, they're going to go after him. So these are things you guys have to be thinking as players and as parents when making that decision about where you're going to commit to. What he says about the team recruiting you, signing 20 guys every class. Someone reacted down here, said no teams sign 20 players in any class. Come on, Kendall. Like me and you, Canes, we've talked about this. Like Miami's got a lot of guys committed in 26. Those recruiting classes are going to shorten. They're going to be a lot less. Most of your Division I schools are going to be bringing in not around 20. It's going to be closer. It's going to be hovering around 10, depending on year, right? Year by year, if all of a sudden your entire starting lineup is going to be gone, well, you're going to have to bring in more high school guys or more portal guys. So it just depends on kind of year by year what the needs of the program are. But certainly, 20 guys, again, they may have brought in 20 guys historically in years past, but it's about, or how many guys are they going to bring in 26? Because, a lot of teams had around 20 people committed in 25, and they had to cut. That's why they had to cut so many guys with all these changes that have gone through. Victor Rojas said, here's the harsh reality. 2 kids we know, both incredibly gifted high school athletes who were sought out by many coming out, signed with D1 schools prior to the fall of 23. One kid got a total of 7 at-bats, and the other never sniffed a field or an at-bat in the spring. Both transferred to different schools. Right? So, these aren't your run-of-the-mill. Again, I mean, you're incredibly gifted if you're going to a high-level Division I school, just generally speaking, compared to your peers. But this is the reality for most guys that are going in as freshmen now. If you're not a Daniel Cuvée or a Drew Burris or a Ford at Virginia who's really going to come out and produce and be at minimum an above average player in the conference, you're probably not getting on the field. And this is Warmongers asking, how many freshmen do you bring in each year? How many make the spring roster after fall ball? Again, that's going to change because now your roster has to be set in the fall. This next fall, your roster has to be set in the fall. So, it's not about making the spring roster. From what we know so far, and again, the fine print's not out yet, but that fall roster is going to maybe have to be set at the beginning of the fall. So if you're on that fall roster, you're going to have to be on the spring roster. From Canes, Miami has 19 kids in 2025. Our coach mentioned that if the fall limit is not raised to 40 and then cut to 34 by December, pretty much all staffs will have to cut some kids or tell them not to show up on campus. He was not happy about it when talking about it. Yeah, and this is the kind of the consensus feeling amongst pretty much every coach in Division I is, it's nice having 40 guys because we can have a lot of depth. We can bring in some guys that could kind of are potential projects. You can have walk-ons. Like I talked about, I played with 2 guys that were legitimate walk-ons. You saw them walking on campus. They looked like a normal student. I did too, just to be honest. But both of them ended up being 3-4-year starters, and one of them even played pro ball, and they were legitimate walk-ons at Georgia Tech. So the thing about baseball is sometimes there's diamonds in the rough, and sometimes there's guys that just get overlooked that end up being ballers. And, one of the things I always talk about is part of the reason for that is when you look at Prep Baseball or Perfect Game, again, I'm not a hater of them, but their rankings are basically majority of them are based on your metrics. You know, do you have outstanding tools? And that makes sense because from a pro perspective, you are looking for tools. But there are a lot of players out there, and a lot of you guys probably listening, that are really good ball players. You may not have outstanding tools, but in college, like, you're a really good player. That type of guy is getting overlooked by a prep baseball or a perfect game. Now, again, I'm not saying all they look at is metrics. I mean, certainly they're looking at performance as well. But guys get missed in the shuffle because of that. Kane says Ford was ranked by PG in 2000. He was a sleeper. Yeah, I mean he's really good. Again, just an advanced bat with power. If you're an advanced bat with power, I mean you're gonna it's gonna play up in college with the way the ball travels now. I'll give you guys this. I mean, just think about because I've seen some guys. I've made videos about, you know, the balls in college combined with like how much the technology in making the BBCOR bats has advanced. The ball people are hitting more home runs than they did before the BBCORs were brought in. And, you know, I always say this, like the era I played in from 2011, I was drafted in 2013, but they didn't make any changes until 2015. So from 2011 to 2014, that's like the dead ball era of college baseball. Okay, like Aaron Judge, his junior year in 2013, he hit like 11 home runs. He hit 11 home runs. That's how hard it was to hit the ball out of the park in that time frame. A guy I played with who played in the big leagues, Daniel Palka, he was third in the country in home runs his junior year with 17. So, you know, when I was in college, if you could hit 10 plus, you had big league power. That was big league power. You know, at least average big league power. And now it's like, that's double that. I mean, if you can hit 20, you got probably average big league power. I mean, that's the reality. So you see a bunch of these guys going to pro ball who hit like 10, 11, 12 home runs in college, and they're not able to really replicate the power numbers, especially in the lower levels. So from Canes again, our coach was a walk-on, and his name and number are hanging on the wall in our outfield. Yeah, Arteaga. I mean, I mean, he's a legend at Miami, and he's been a part of that staff, and now I think rightfully so, the head coach, but forever. And that's the thing is, like, when you're missing the walk-ons, again, it's going to make the lower Division II, D3, they're going to be even more competitive now. But you are missing that, man, I like this guy. I don't know if we can give him any money because I don't know if he's going to be an impact guy, but we'd love to offer him a roster spot. That's out the window now. Because guys like that would every once in a while turn into an everyday all ACC contributor or all SEC or whatever contributor on your team. And now you don't have the ability to bring in a guy as a walk-on. But why was he ranked so low by PG? He wasn't even the highest rated player in his state at his position. Makes no sense. What I would say is like, I didn't get what you said earlier, Kane. So you said he was ranked in like the 2000s. Well, like some of these guys, like, and I mean, it's kind of unfortunate, but like if you don't play in a lot of the like perfect game events, or you don't go to a lot of the showcases, like one, it's harder for them to get eyes on you, so they can't really rank you that high. But I mean, certainly that was definitely like a miss by them, right? I mean, he ended up being one of the best freshmen in the country. I think he was a consensus freshman All-American and All-ACC. I mean, just like, kind of like Drew Burress. Burress playing a more premium defensive position, obviously, and had better overall numbers. But Cuvée, I mean, same thing. I mean, Cuvée he was just a stud. And again, like 24 home runs as a freshman. I think Burress hit 25. Those type of players, when I was playing, they probably hit like 10 plus, maybe around 12. Like Daniel Palka, I think his freshman year hit 12. And this guy had like the most power I've ever seen in my career, including professional baseball. And when he was in the big leagues, I mean, his highest exit velos were up there with Judge, Stanton, and those guys. And he hit 12 home runs his freshman year. And in his junior year, he hit 17. So you have guys coming in like Drew Burress has legit power. Does he have more power than Daniel Palka? I don't think so, but he hit double the home runs that Daniel Palka hit as a freshman. So it's just like it's a different era now. So if you're a power bat, that's why everyone's looking at like if you're the most important thing for hitters that guys are recruiting. Again, you need some like guys like me still that were leadoff type hitters that are going to set the table and work their walks and get on base. But everybody wants a guy. If you have like decent power, you're going to hit 10 plus home runs in college baseball now. And that's just, I mean, you that brings so much value to a lineup. If you're a 300 plus hitter and you hit 10 plus home runs, like you're a valuable guy in a lineup. And that wasn't the case, I think shoot, man, like we had some of the most power in the AC in the country in 2013. We had the number one offense in the country for most of the year. And I think as a team, we hit like 60 or 65 home runs, maybe not even that. And now it's like the best teams are hitting like 130. How crazy is that? That in how much it's changed. And guys on the internet are like, players are just stronger and they got better swings. And I'm like, I always comment like the weight room was a thing when we were playing too. In 2011, we were working out hard in the weight room. We were strong. It's just like the ball went nowhere. Miami has a kid like that in 2025, Tim Plasantin in Canada. He's projected to be a first or third round pick, according to some people I've talked to. Yeah, there's a good chance he makes it to Miami, Kane, just because a lot of the Canadian kids like this, and I work with a lot of guys from Canada. One of the things that is a knock on them is teams do not know how they're going to turn. Like, are they facing competitive enough pitching, and how that's going to, is it going to translate to high level D1 when they're facing 90 or 90 plus every game? Is it going to translate to pro ball when you're facing that with a wood bat? So, there's a lot of Canadian guys that get projected as early picks and they end up falling. So you guys could see him down there in Coral Gables, but who knows? Andrew Breen, with all the changes by NCAA in the past few months, there is a lot of unknowns like you've talked about before for recruiting. When do you think the dust settles and we settle into a new norm? That's a great question. I think you're going to see that happen probably after this coming summer, because again, a lot of the fine print, Andrew, is, we're still waiting to hear. And like, I think in one of my videos, I told you guys, like from what I've been hearing is that's going to be kind of finalized maybe in like March, April time. So the 26 recruiting is going really slow because of that, like figuring out again, because if the fall roster doesn't have to be locked until like end of the fall, then you can bring in some extra guys as walk-ons and tell them like, hey, the roster gets set at the end of the fall, but you got a chance to make a roster spot. Now with teams going to higher scholarship numbers, it's kind of it's going to be a negative for walk-ons, because it's like, well, if they got 50% in this guy, am I going to be able to even win a spot? But I think you see the new norm start to establish at the end of this summer, especially once the 27s can start communicating with schools after August 1st. So like we're going to see that continue to develop. But I do think like we're going to start seeing the norm, but maybe settling is like not this summer, but like next summer. So, over maybe like 16 months from now. Again, it could be quicker, but once the dust is settled with like the fine print of all these changes, we'll see that happen, and we'll get an idea of kind of what recruiting classes are going to look like out of high school. Again, like I can tell you with the certainty they're going to be smaller, but the question is like how much smaller. And again, you never know. Are they going to come out with some new legislation for the portal guys? I know a lot of coaches are pushing or would like to see portal players have to commit to playing at the school for 2 years, and then that would have a big impact. But I think there's nothing on that officially going to be happening. I just think coaches are kind of they're lobbying for that for sure. So another question from Andrew, meaning what class, 2026, 2027, 28, 29, has things a bit more settled down? I think 27s for sure. 26s, like the coaches know the rules now. So no one's going to be over recruiting in 26 right now, because again, we're waiting for that fine print to come out, and they know like the roster is going to have to be set at 34 at some point in the fall. So I don't think any schools in the 26 class are going to be really over recruiting. They may try to like push it a little bit, but you're not going to see in the 26 class the amount of guys that got cut from commitments a month or two before kind of National Signing Day. You're not going to see that with the 26 class. That was a total cause and effect of the NCAA announcing these changes when they did, and coaches like panicking and having like, there's no way we can keep this many guys now. At least with the 26 class, coaches know, okay, we can only have 34 guys. We need to know when that roster is got to be officially set. But I think you're going to see that you're going to see that 100% settle with the 27 class, because by the time they even have the ability to contact 27s August 1st of this coming August 1st, they'll know all the details, and so they'll be able to make like the full adjustment. But great question, thanks for asking it. So like going into some more of these, we all knew this was coming, yet the offseason gurus still promoted all these signings. Not all of them, and we're not gurus at Elite Sports Advising. Just, we all played the game at high levels. We coached at high levels. Not gurus. We're guys that have been there, done that. So I don't know who the offseason gurus he's talking about. Maybe like he's talking about some, club teams he knows, or travel ball teams he knows, or some of the, I don't know, some other, maybe there's some other college baseball guys online that were saying, that were telling kids, hey, commit to the best school you can, which we've never done. That's never been our message. Even before the portal and all this stuff was a thing, we've always valued, hey, go where you're going to play. It's not, we don't care if it, I tell every client I meet, or potential client I meet with, I say, like, it would make us look great if when we make a post about you committing, that it was to Tennessee or to North Carolina or Georgia Tech or Vanderbilt or whatever, or Stanford or Oklahoma or Michigan. But if I don't think if you're not going to get a chance to play there as a freshman, I'm not going to advise you to do that. It's ultimately your decision. And I can't make the decision for you. It's your career. I'm going to advise you on where I think the best place is. And the players that, generally speaking, the players that listen to that advice have gone on to have really good careers, played professional baseball, or at least got played for 3 or 4 years at a really good school. A lot of kids with nice graphic commitment tweets getting deleted. And this is kind of back to the thread. Again, I'm seeing this all over the place. Like we push out content, and then a few days later, you see guys kind of like mimicking content. A lot of these kids with nice graphic commitment tweets, which my brother made a thread about either yesterday or 2 days ago, saying like, stop prioritizing like announcing on Twitter with a cool graphic that you committed to like this amazing school. That's not what it's about. If your goal is to play high-level college baseball, play professional baseball one day, your goal should be just playing time. That's the number one goal. A lot of these graphics are getting deleted because they got misled by people more worried about the retweet for business or own clout. Exactly. So thank you, Brooks McDowell, for the promotion of Elite Sports Advising, because we do not value that at all. Again, we push out, we make our own commitment graphics and tweets, but it's not because we don't care where you commit. We're telling you where the best place you're going to have a chance to play right away is. And some kids, that is a Vanderbilt or a Georgia Tech or a Tennessee. Some kids, that's a D2 like a Young Harris in Georgia, or a JUCO like Northwest Florida or Gulf Coast State. That's the reality. Andrew Bream again with another question. Do you think guys who are young at graduation age, or graduation age wise, like 16 or 17 years old, should consider a prep year if they aren't physically fully mature? This is becoming a very popular question, Andrew. This is what I have to say about it. First of all, you can physically mature. Like, I think a lot of people, and I talked about this yesterday in a video on YouTube about you're not working hard enough. This is what you do to get more physical. This is what you do to develop yourself as a baseball player. So check that out, because it's like a 20-minute video going all over that stuff. It doesn't take, I think most people think it takes like a year or two to get really get more physical. The reality is if you eat enough calories per day, and in that video I say like minimum 4,000 a day, depending on your time frame. If you're an older guy, maybe you up that to 5,000 or 6,000 calories. I know because I did that my sophomore summer in college. I ate 6,500 calories a day, and I put on 20 pounds in 3 months. And you're eating 150 grams minimum of protein per day. A lot of the studies are saying like whatever your goal weight is, you eat 1 gram of protein per pound of your goal body weight. You do that daily and you're working out 4 or 5 times a week, you'll gain 20 pounds in 3 months or 15 pounds in 3 months. And then you'll look like a totally different person. So, but to the prep year thing, this is the issue with the prep year. I'm not against it. I think with some guys, it could make sense. But ultimately, you're not gaining what college coaches are looking for, meaning you're not gaining that track record that they're looking for. You know, they want guys that are proven players, and that's why they're going to the portal so much. So instead of taking the prep year, you know, in a summer, in a 3-month summer before you get to a campus, you could put on 15, 20 pounds if you're really dedicated to it. And you can go to a school where you're going to get a chance to play and get numbers that are recorded. And so if you do a great job and you perform, schools know you have that track record now. So I'm not against the prep year. I just think like if you're going to a prep year because you're holding out for Division I, that's a mistake. If you have D2, JUCO, D3 options on the table, the prep year I don't think is going to give you so much benefit that now you're committing to like a good D1. I just don't think that probably happens for a small percentage of guys that do it, but the majority of guys, like they're not getting that much better. And again, you're still an unproven high school player. So I hope that answers it. I think 2027 to 2028, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, that could be the case, Canes, again, because like these changes have happened so fast. Like who knows what's coming next? Hopefully it's nothing. Hopefully nothing coming next, but we'll never know. Appreciate all the questions, guys. Like keep them coming. If you have questions, like we can do this for a long time. Canes, whenever the super seniors are out of college is when it's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, the thing is like, it's crazy too, is like just everybody's getting like a 5th year of eligibility. And, you know, obviously like the COVID seniors, like that's done now. That's not going to be a problem in the future. But it seems like that the NCAA is just like awarding all these guys who kind of petitioned for it extra years of eligibility. I mean, in football, it's like you've seen a guy who's been like 10 years. He's got like 10 years of eligibility. And you're just like, how does that... Like, I get it if you've been hurt a few times, but like, how do you get 10 years? They need to make the announcements so I can know when they committed. Yeah. I know, for a guy like you, Canes, I know you're staying on top of that stuff. No, because they can be draft eligible sophomores. Oh, yeah. Canes is worried about if they go to Miami, they're getting being draft eligible sophomores. The reality too, Canes, is like I was a draft eligible sophomore just because like I was really young for my grade in kindergarten with my twin brother. And my mom was a teacher and she was like, you know, like boys in particular, like if they're really young for their grade, like it hurts their development. So like my parents kept us back a year before going into elementary school. And so I was a draft eligible sophomore. But now there's way more draft eligible sophomores because they moved the draft date back. So now like way more players fall under the draft eligible sophomore stuff. Great thing for Georgia Tech is Drew Burress is not a draft eligible sophomore, which I think that was like one of the first things I asked Ramsey halfway through the season last year when Burress was doing what he was doing. I'm like, hey, is he draft eligible sophomore? And I think he looked at me and was like, no, thank God. Like he's not. Like we get him for 3 years. Andrew, loved that video yesterday. Watching it with my son this weekend. Perfect. And it's funny. Like my dad called me yesterday and was like, Kyle, you're going kind of hard in that video. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, I think a lot of kids these days, and obviously I'm not talking about you, Andrew, but just in general. And I think we all agree that just kids aren't told the truth, and they're kind of treated like babies. Instead of being like, you know, when they make an excuse like, well, I've been eating a lot and I'm not putting on weight. And I say it in the video, I'm like, it's a math equation. Like this isn't a philosophy theory. This is a math equation. And if you eat enough calories, you eat more calories than you burn, you're going to put on weight. And all the studies are showing now, if you eat a lot of protein, you're going to see way more muscle growth. So it's, I'm just trying, like every once in a while I have to go kind of hard in these videos because I just want kids to really get it. These are things that I wish I knew when I was in high school. Like I've talked about this a bunch, but when I was in high school, I'm an ectomorph body type, like what's known as a hard gainer, meaning like I got to eat a lot of calories and a lot of protein to put on weight. And I didn't know that in high school. I just knew I was working. I played football. I was working out 5 days a week with all my buddies in high school. And I drank a protein shake after workouts just like they did. But it's like, it was like a 20 gram or 25 gram protein shake. And back then, what was known about protein was that after like 40, 50 grams, you really can't do anything. Your body can't process the rest of it. So there's no sense in eating a lot of protein. Well, now, man, I wish I had known that when I was in high school that, man, if you eat 100 and 200 grams of protein a day, you're going to get serious muscle gain on top of eating a lot of calories. And like I said, that transformation, I did it in 3 months. I went from after a season, I probably was like 150 or 148 I probably lost like 10 pounds. And I put on 20 pounds. So I walked in at Georgia Tech at 173. And, I had walked in as a freshman at 153. My junior's fall, I walked onto campus at 173, and I looked like a totally different player. I had more bat speed. I was faster than I ever was. And that was what my concern was, because I was a speed player. I was, my fastest 60 at that time was like a 6'3". So I was like, man, I just can't lose a step for professional baseball purposes. Like, speed's my tool. And I actually ran the fastest 60 I ever ran on our kind of scout day that fall. I ran a 6'2". So that was like all I needed to see, that you get stronger everywhere in your lower half, you're going to get faster. You get stronger in your upper half, you're going to have more bat speed, your arms going to get stronger, etc. Andrew Breen again. It's also that there are a lot of distractions these days, i.e. devices, 100%. So it's easy to get lost in those instead of remembering what's important if you have aspirations in the game, 100%. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old right now, and like me and my wife, it's like we're trying to not let them watch any screens. I mean, maybe like 30 minutes a day on watch it, like a cartoon or something. But certainly with the phones, it's like all the stuff that's coming out, especially the smartphones. It's just such a detriment. And my generation was kind of the last generation to go through adolescence without that. Like, the iPhone came out when I was in high school, and I remember my dad was the Atlanta general. This is a funny story. My dad was a general manager of the Atlanta Braves. He would say, and me and my brothers would be like, "Can we get an iPhone?" And he would tell us, we can't afford the iPhone plan." And when you're like a freshman in high school in 8th grade, you're like, "Oh, okay." Like, meanwhile, these kids at my school are, using iPhones. And it finally, like, when I was older, I was like, "Dad, did you just like straight up lie to us?" And it was like, "Yeah, you didn't need that thing. You didn't need that thing." But yeah, certainly the devices and really, Andrew, like the biggest distraction, not besides the fact that like the dopamine addiction and everything. And listen, like I'm as bad as anybody else with that stuff. I think we all are as a society, but there's so many voices out there, Andrew, baseball voices that have no idea what they're talking about, and how and all they're doing is killing guys' careers with like the hitting instruction they're giving, and some of the pitching stuff and the workout stuff. Like every kid thinks they have to be on some kind of special program in the weight room, and I said, just like go in there, bench, squat, deadlift, do some pull-ups, like do some like curls and tries for the girls or whatever. And just every week, try to challenge yourself to do more weight. You just do that, you will gain muscle strength, as long as you're doing the dietary stuff too. Stephen Taylor, if youth knew if age could. I can maybe say that again, Taylor. I'm not sure if I know what you're trying to say. If youth knew if age could. That may be some kind of old saying that maybe I'm still too young to get. I don't know. Say it, like, explain it to me. Comment again, explain what you're trying to say. Bill, welcome back, man. Parents don't want to hear it either. I got out of coaching last 2 years because of telling the truth and then dealing with out of touch parents. Yeah, I mean, that is a a big issue, like with all of our clients, we like our first meeting, we have a roles and expectations call, and we go over like, listen, my job's not to like sugarcoat things. My job's to tell you the truth. And if we need to pivot based on, you know, how you've been performing or what coaches are saying to like a lower level, I'm going to tell you, we're going to pivot. And, you know, telling a kid, like, again, like sometimes you see guys post videos. Like I've worked with a guy who posted a video and it did not make him look good. And I said, and again, like in this era, kids want to post videos of them pimping stuff. And, you know, a guy, I saw a kid, I was watching a game sitting with some coaches who they were watching this player, and he hits a ground ball to second baseman and doesn't even run to first. He just kind of like watches it and starts walking back to the dugout. And when I tell you they went like this with a clipboard. Nope, not touching that. Because at what point, if a kid thinks that's okay, like that, we're gonna have to do a lot of work to get them to buy in and work with our culture. But yeah, back to Bill. Sorry, Canes, I'll get to you in a second. Back to what Bill was saying. Like some parents are also really bad about it. Like they're not willing to be honest with the kid about when he's not acting right. Like I tell my guys all the time, like run every at bat, run down the line like a coach is there. Then you shouldn't even have to say that. But you know, when I get a text from a coach, they like ran a 4.7 down the first baseline. I'm like, dude. Sometimes coaches go incognito for you guys out there. Like a lot of times they're out there in their gear, but if they're really trying to get a feel for the type of player, they'll go incognito. So you don't know they're there, and they want to see, okay, what does he play like when I'm not here? And a lot of times they'll see stuff they don't like. Canes, man said he can't afford the iPhone plan. Man was the GM of the Marlins. No, he was the assistant GM of the Marlins. He was the GM of the Orioles. There's a famous article about kind of him and Peter Angelos getting into it. Ultimately was fired from the Orioles. And then he was the assistant GM of the Atlanta Braves and then became the GM of the Atlanta Braves until 2014. And then he was fired. And then 2016 or 17, he was an executive vice president of the Red Sox. But yeah, still. Yeah, I mean, he told us he couldn't afford the iPhone plan. He said that to our face. And we just bought it too. We were like, oh, okay, yeah. It must be really expensive. But yeah, that's what he said. So some more of these reactions, so many options, 1,700 varsity teams, almost 300 NCBA teams, and who knows how many JV teams. All can be great ways to keep playing while you continue your education. Yeah, and again, like, you know, some guys don't want to go on a JV team, and I get it. But like, if you're on a JV team at University of Tampa and you get a chance of making the varsity team there, that's a good option. And we'll see what some of these other ones say. I think these are just... Here we go. From Next Level Baseball. The best of the best outwork people daily. It's kind of the stuff... This is kind of exactly what I said in my meeting or in my video yesterday. They stack days, they stack weeks, they stack months, they stack years. They simply win the time spent investment model. Their relentless discipline, their fun is outworking everyone around them. Yeah, and this is. I mean, it's like, I think what's the old saying about the stock market? It's like, you know, time in the market will always beat timing the market. So the earlier and the longer you're invested in the stock market, eventually, that compounding interest will outpace trying to time the market. And again, unless you invested in Bitcoin, you know, when it was like $10, and then you're probably not going to outpace that. But the analogy remains, and this is like stuff like Kobe Bryant would say all the time. Like, I don't care what you did this offseason. I've been stacking days for 15 years. You're never going to compete with me. You're never going to compete with me. And talking about hitting and stuff, I told you guys we're talking a little bit about hitting and everything. Let me see. Steven, see what you got, Steven, for me. Steven Taylor, balance. You give great advice from experience. To say, if we only knew now back then, an old saying. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of one of the things, like, man, I love about coaching and helping players through the process is like, I had so much help and had such an advantage because of who my dad was and who my uncle was a scout in Major League Baseball for a long time, and front office guy. So I had a huge advantage over a lot of players of my peers in my time because of that. But there's still so much stuff that I learned, with 2 years left in my pro career. The nutrition thing halfway through my college career. There's things that I learned from experience, and then ultimately, like, I try to give the kids that I work with and kids that I coach and maybe I run into that advice so they have it as early as possible. And then it's just ultimately up to them if they want to do it. And that's what I tell every kid. I'm like, your career is in your hands, no one else's. Like, I don't believe in excuses. I don't believe in, I wasn't very lucky. I don't believe in luck. Like, literally, you can outwork luck. You work as hard as possible. You can go where you want to go. I can't stand that guy. Which guy were you talking about, Canes? Was I just talking about? I mean, this is how locked in I am to talking. I can't even remember. That guy is a Florida State writer, always talking bad about Miami. Which guy? Oh, Next Level Baseball. Okay. Next Level Baseball. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he is. Who knows? But of course, if Kendall Rogers 2 hours ago, I'm sure you read this, Canes, talking about Canes Miami, saying could be one of the programs that makes a sizable move in 2025 with the return of Daniel Cuvée and the addition of Max Galvin. Canes has all the pieces needed to elevate their game in the spring, and they have an in-depth look at Miami's fall workouts. Even though, probably knowing you, Canes, you probably read all the fall workouts. You probably read all the fall inter squads. All right, let me see if I can find this clip here. I know, Andrew, I'll get to your question in a second, or your whatever you're saying. Okay, I got it pulled up now. I don't want to listen to that. Okay. So, Andrew, what advice do you give to players who are focused on top academic schools who maybe are not top-level D1 players but can play low-level D1 to D3? How do you target those schools? Just through relationships, Andrew. Like, and here in I live around Atlanta, Emory, really good baseball program, Division III. So it's just about having the relationships at those schools and then ultimately getting those schools out to see the player and, figure out if they're a fit. Obviously, there's a lot of really good Division III high academics in the Northeast, where and a lot of the players, probably a large minority of the players, like maybe 25-30% of our clients are really looking for high academic school and don't care about level. Like, if they can get a Division I, obviously that's great. But if not, like they want to prioritize Division I over going to a, or they want to prioritize high academic over going to like the highest level school they can get to. So Andrew, we just do it through relationships. Like, that's how we work with all of our clients. It's about, we don't send out mass emails. We don't email any coaching staff. Like, we call them, we text them, send them our clients' schedules, send them video of the client so they have an idea of what he looks like. And then they may say, hey, looks great. Like, send me a schedule, and then bam, send it to them. And then ultimately, like, for a high academic kid, we would send that out to every high academic school in the country, depending on their preferences. If they're like, we'd love to be in the Northeast or the Southeast or whatever, we always say, like, keep an open mind, but we target all those schools that you're looking for, as long as we feel like it's a fit baseball wise. Like, obviously the academics have to be a fit too at a high academic school, but if the academics are a fit and the baseball is a fit, we're going to reach out, because that's how we keep coaches' trust. We don't just send every player we work with to Tennessee, because it's wasting their time and it's wasting the client's time. Canes, and that's me on the bottom commenting. Oh, I have to look. I didn't see. I have to go down. I have to look. I got another video pulled up here, but I'll go look in a second. Telling him that the ACC is praying the season started today. We have the best strength and conditioning coach in the nation. He is without a doubt the best hire we've made in the last 10 to 15 years. Yeah, I mean, it is. I think it's really highly valued now. But it used to be that, guys were who are really good strength coaches. Like that wasn't a bit like people didn't think that way, but now with the like really how advanced it is now, like the guy, here's the like the thing at Georgia Tech, it's Steve Tambora. He's been there for he was there with Mark Teixeira. That tells you anything. So he's been there since like the early 2000s, maybe even before that. We always joke because like the guy he's getting old now, but he's as fit as possible, and he looks way younger than he is. But he's the type of guy that with your strength coach, they're with the players more than the baseball coaches because they see him in the weight room. They see them at the baseball field. They see them on the road when you're playing every game of the season. So your strength coach sees the team more than any of the other coaches, pretty much. Steve Tambora has done like weddings for Georgia Tech players. I still talk to him all the time. His son's actually a really good player in the state of Georgia in the 27 or 28 class. He's top 10 player in the state. But every guy that's played at Georgia Tech typically has a really good relationship with him. So like that's the thing with the strength coach is not only can they have an impact on the physicality of your team, which is the most important part, but they're also like a lot of times the strength coach is like the soul of the team because you're around that guy so much. And if the strength coach holds guys to a high standard, the team's going to be good. And Tambora at Georgia Tech 100% does that. And if you mess up, you'll remember that conditioning punishment that you had to do, whatever it ended up being. For the last 6 years, we looked like a high school team on the field, and we would win somehow. Now we have an MLB trainer. Yeah, I mean, I think like one thing Miami's always known for, Canes, is obviously like Miami gets a lot like some of the best Latin American players in the U.S. At their school. You could say that same is true like in some of the Texas schools, but Miami gets those guys. I mean, it looks like a professional infield with their actions every year. You go down there and you know the infield defense is going to be really good. And they all got cannons. They all can really pick it. But I think you are true. Like it seems like with some of those kids, like they're not as physical, which is true of a lot of the young. Like if you get to pro ball and you're at the complex in spring training, a lot of the really young, like Dominican players or Venezuelan players, they're not as physical, but they're twitchy. They're twitchy as hell. And the more physical you get those guys, oh my gosh. So like, yeah, 100% of Miami, if that's something that they can really develop, that's huge for them. So one of these videos, guys, I wanted to bring up here and talk about some hitting for a little bit. So this is Max Clark, obviously really high draft pick. Was it last year? Gosh, I mean, the time's flying by, a year or two ago. And there's so many guys out there, like I don't want to name the guy because all of his followers will like, I made a video about Teacher Man and I basically said, I don't agree with everything he does. I think some of the stuff he does could help certain players. And for that, I was basically told I'm an idiot. I have no idea what I'm talking about. And again, like whenever someone who talking about myself, knows a hell of a lot about the swing and been there, done that, 290 career hitter in professional baseball, most of it in AAA. Maybe something's up. And what I found is every time I've talked about him, I basically get told, you just don't understand what he teaches. And I'm like, I've watched a bunch of his videos. I think I have an idea. But there's, one of the things he talks about, and there's a lot of guys out there that do this now, talk about, don't all your weight on your back leg. You don't need to gain ground. Does Max Clark look like he's gaining ground towards the pitcher? Swing looks really good. He's through the ball. He's driving it, back spinning it, squaring it up. But look how much ground he gains. He's starting way behind those tape lines, and he's landing at the front tape line. Okay? So that is something, and I'll keep playing it here for a second. I'd turn the volume down. But that's something that I see so I see so many kids now that are scared to do this. They're scared to gain ground towards the pitcher. Now let's think about this. If you're sitting on your back leg, there's no way for you to adjust off speed. Watch any elite hitter in the major leagues. What they do to buy time and adjust off speed is they land on their front leg, and you'll see the front knee start to bend a little bit as their weight shifts. And then all of a sudden, they'll brace it, and they can still turn and get to the ball. Now, if you're on your back leg, this is what all the best hitting coaches in the major leagues talk about. If you're too much on your back leg, all you can do is sit and spin. So your direction is going to be totally spinny, meaning if you have no plate coverage on the outer half, you're spinning and you're spinning off the ball because the forward move creates that brace at the front that allows you to stop rotating. So if you watch him, he'll stop rotating his upper half at some point. Usually you stop, like if I'll show you here, usually you stop. All right, so his torso is facing where the ball goes. So if you hit an opposite field, if you hit an opposite field and you're a lefty, you're going to face opposite field. If you pull it, you're going to face where you pull it to. Up the middle, your torso is going to face center field. And too many guys are teaching this like back leg stuff. And think about it just kinetically, energy wise. If your energy in your body is moving towards the pitcher, it's way easier for your swing to stay on the ball. The lower half has to clear, create space for your hands to move through, but you got to have that forward move to keep you on center. Let's see what A. Reyes, my boy Reyes says. I think it's Aris Reyes. I think he is jumping in his swing. The best players like Bonds, Manny Ramirez, Ortiz, Friedman, Gwynn, Pujols, you have to stay back. That's true. But, I mean, I promise you, if you look at Ortiz or you look at Manny Ramirez, they had leg kicks, they gained ground. You can definitely gain too much ground. I'm with you there, Reyes. It's all about when you land, is your front leg bracing. So watch. Once his front foot strikes, that front heel, he's no longer moving towards the pitcher. And guys get this confused a lot. They think, well, his head's still moving towards the pitcher. Isn't that messing it up? No. Your head moving will only mess you up if it's going one up or down. So if your head's going up and down, that's an issue. But if your head's just moving towards the pitcher, you're fine. And again, it's not like, again, even like I'll say this, Reyes, like guys like Pujols who are no stride, like leg up, like foot up, foot down. And Tony Gwynn was even a leg kick guy. I'm a big believer in the leg kick because I think it allows the most adjustability and allows you to be athletic. It doesn't mean you have to have a massive leg kick, but I think it does give you the best adjustability in your swing. But even guys like Pujols, if you're not going to stride, if you're a no stride guy, please listen to this. You got to be an elite mover. You got to be an elite mover, meaning your lower half has to really create space, has to clear to allow those arms to follow and catch up. And if you're not, like the leg kick helps you do that. Like I was not a guy who was in my legs. It was hard for me to get in my legs, and the leg kick allowed me to do that and unlock my lower half. Way too much. Bill says way too much over efficiency or efficient on a mechanics today. 100%. The biggest issue, and I think Andrew brought it up earlier about devices, is every kid now, like all they think about is, oh, I went 0 for 3 today. I got to make some mechanical adjustment. In reality, it's like, okay, and this is what I talk about a bunch. I had, now knowing about like, you know, what a good swing looks like, I didn't have that great of a swing. I was an elite hitter. So I knew what pitch I was hunting, what zone I was hunting it in. I was 100% committed to if that pitch was that I was hunting was in my zone, or at least it looked like the pitch I was swinging. I was putting my A swing on it. And too many kids are up there without an approach, so they're looking to cover the whole zone. They're not hunting a pitch, and so like they're not going to have a lot of success. Especially like maybe in high school you can get away with that when guys are throwing like 78. When you get to college and guys are throwing high 80s, low 90s consistently, you can't get away with that anymore. If that makes sense. So that's one of the things I talk about a lot is developing an approach, knowing what you're trying to do in the plate every time, and then grading yourself. Like, hey, did I get myself out? Was I hunting a fastball inner third or inner half and I swung at a changeup on the outside corner? Like, what am I doing? That wasn't my swing. I was looking for a pitch on the inside half that was a fastball. And again, if he throws you a changeup inside half and you swing through it, great. I knew I was going the best and my approach was perfect. When first pitch, I get a changeup where I'm looking and it looked like a fastball and I swung right through it. The problem was when I would slow my swing down just to make contact, then I roll over to second base. Got a few more minutes here before I end it, guys. Really appreciate all the questions and interactions today. Obviously, tomorrow is Saturday. We'll not be streaming, but we'll be back Monday. Around the same time. I'm going to try to be consistent around 1 to 2 o'clock. But we'll have a lot of stuff to cover. Any more news that comes out, we'll be covering it. We'll be talking hitting. We'll be talking pitching. We didn't get to the pitching today, but we can get that later. And obviously, I have a few guys with Elite that were college pitching coaches, so maybe we can get them on there. You can't say that enough, Bill says. Elite hitter, not an elite swing. Again, yeah, like I'm all about, like, let's build an elite swing as best as we can, but like you can get way more benefit from just knowing what your approach is right away and knowing what you're trying to do and knowing how to make an adjustment with 2 strikes and choking up and getting on top of the plate and fighting. I talk about it all the time. Like, hitters can get so much benefit from knowing what they're trying to do when they step in the box, as opposed to just trying to hunt everything and cover the whole plate, especially before 2 strikes. Like, you're just not going to have a lot of success. Like Steve Springer, who probably a lot of you guys know, he says it best. Like, if you're out there trying to hit everything, you're going to hit nothing. That's just the reality. Canes, were you able to confirm the Clemson number? Not yet. We've reached out. We're waiting for confirmation. And again, it may be something like coaches sometimes are kind of like, they don't want to confirm stuff like that again, but it'll come out. We'll find out. Last question before we go. Reyes, some Cuban and Dominican teachers, they say the only thing they cannot teach you is timing because that's you that has to execute when the time comes up. Some players have hand-eye coordination crazy. That's right. And timing, yeah, you're 100% right. Like, you can't teach timing. You have to see the pitcher's wind up or his stretch, what his motion is, how quick he is to the plate, and you have to adjust. If you're a big leg kick guy and the guy's slide stepping, you got to shorten that thing up. So timing is all about, and again, like I always would tell myself in the box, be early. Because if you're early, you're probably on time. Because especially when you're facing velocity, you think you're on time, but you're late. But be early. So appreciate all the comments, guys. Kane says, I don't think they want to confirm it. Yeah, they may not. So we'll see. But we'll be back again Monday. Appreciate you guys talking and interacting. Hope you guys got a lot of value at this. We'll be back again soon.